The Tree of Nmor, a story of darkness, courage, and faith. The ancient Iroko tree stood at the center of Nmor Girls Boarding School like a monument to something that refused to be forgotten. Its roots had broken through the concrete of the quadrangle long ago, twisting through the earth like the veins of an ancient beast. Some said the tree was older than the school, older than Nmor village itself. Its branches hung wide and crooked, draped over the dormitory windows like the arms of a giant. Even under the bright sun, the shadows it cast were too deep, too still, shadows that did not move with the wind. When the school bus rolled through the rusted gates, Chibugo Okafor pressed her face to the window. She noticed the tree immediately, and for a reason she couldn't explain, her heart began to race. It was January, the start of a new term, and she was the only new student among dozens of returning girls. Their chatter filled the bus like bird song, but she sat quietly, her fingers gripping the small wooden cross in her pocket. It was a gift from her grandmother, who had passed away 6 months earlier. "That tree," Chibugo said softly, pointing out the window to the girl beside her. "How old is it?" The girl, who had introduced herself earlier as Amara, went suddenly still. Her eyes flicked toward the tree, then away again. "We don't talk about the tree. Not during the day, not ever." Before Chibugo could ask what she meant, the bus screeched to a spot. The students poured out, dragging metal boxes and bedding toward the dormitories that surrounded the quadrangle. The tree stood at the far end, its trunk easily 20 feet across, the bark blackened and wet-looking, as if it had been soaked in oil. Chibugo's dormitory, Hostel B, Room 7, smelled faintly of disinfectant and dust. She would share it with 5 girls, Amara, Ngozi, Chiamaka, Blessing, and Ifioma. They were all SS2 students, around her age, though they looked more worn than she expected. There was a watchfulness in their eyes, a quietness that didn't match their laughter from earlier. "You're the new girl," Ngozi said, her voice low and strong. She had tall shoulders, neat cornrows, and the faint tribal marks of the Nusaka people on her cheeks. "Are you Chibugo, right?" "Yes," she replied, forcing a smile. "Where are you from?" Chiamaka asked, twisting a braid around her finger. "Enugu. My father was transferred here." "City girl," murmured Ifioma from her bunk. She was lean and quiet, her eyes sharp and serious. "Things are different here in Nmor village." "Different how?" No one answered. Ngozi only shrugged and looked toward the window where the tree's branches scraped faintly against the glass. That night, after lights out, the hostel fell silent except for the buzz of distant insects. Chibugo lay awake on the top bunk, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling twisting in her stomach. Then she heard it, a soft rustling, like leaves moving against the wall. There was no wind outside. The night air was still. Tap, tap, tap. Something was knocking lightly on the window. Chibugo opened her eyes. A long branch was pressed against the glass, its end sliding slowly back and forth. But their room was on the 2nd floor. The nearest branches shouldn't have reached that high. She leaned closer. The glass was cold. Beyond it, she saw movement, faces. Pale, half-formed faces floating among the branches, eyes wide and wet like drowned things. Their lips moved silently, mouths forming words she couldn't hear. "What are those?" she whispered. Amara's voice came from below, trembling. "Don't look at it. Close your eyes. Don't look at it." But it was too late. The faces were staring right at her. When she finally closed her eyes, her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might wake the others. By morning, the tree looked normal again, just an old giant in the courtyard. But Chibugo could still feel it watching. Throughout the day, she noticed how the other students avoided it, how they never walked on that side of the yard, how teachers refused to open the blinds of classrooms facing the quadrangle. She noticed the memorial plaques by the chapel doors, each engraved with a name and a date of death. All girls, all students, all during term time. That evening, as the sun dipped red behind the hostel, Amara pulled her aside. "Tonight they'll come for you," she said in a low voice. "Who?" she frowned. "The seniors, the daughters of the deep. They come for every new girl." "For what?" Amara looked around nervously. "The initiation. You'll be taken to the tree at midnight. They'll make you swear loyalty to the queen. If you refuse—" She swallowed hard. "You'll die within 3 nights." "That's nonsense," Chibugo said, though her voice was shaking. "You're just trying to scare me." "Ask about Chidingna. She refused. They found her dead in her bed 3 days later. No wound, no sickness, nothing." Silence hung between them. Amara looked at the cross Chibugo wore around her neck. "That won't save you here," she said softly. "Not from her." When midnight came, Chibugo was dragged from her bed by 6 girls in white nightgowns. Their eyes gleamed like glass in the darkness. Adeaze, the head girl, stood in front, tall and graceful, her long braids gleaming silver in the moonlight. "Come with us," she said. "It's time." "And if I refuse?" Adeaze smiled faintly. "No one refuses, not if they want to live." The other girls in the dorm watched silently as Chibugo was led out. None of them moved to stop it. They couldn't. The air outside was cold, heavy with mist. The tree loomed before her, larger than she remembered. A ring of girls stood around it, all in white, their bare feet pressed into the dirt. "Welcome, new daughter," said a voice that didn't come from any of them. It came from the tree. The bark began to shift and ripple like the surface of water. From it emerged a face, beautiful, ancient, and terrible. Her eyes were like deep rivers, her hair long and dark like seaweed. "I am Neneka," the voice echoed through the air, "queen of the waters, ruler of the deep. Through this tree I claim my daughters." The girls bowed their heads in unison. Only Chibugo stood tall. "I am not your daughter," she said. The face in the tree tilted slightly, as though amused. "All who come to this place are mine. Your soul already drinks from my roots." "No," Chibugo said firmly. "I belong to God." A murmur spread among the girls. Adeaze stepped forward, her expression cold. "Bow to the queen," she ordered. Chibugo's hand tightened around her cross. "I serve a greater king." The queen's beautiful face twisted, her voice rumbling like thunder. "You dare speak his name here?" Chibugo's heart pounded, but she did not back away. She raised her cross and began to pray out loud. "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name." The wind screamed, the branches writhed violently, and faces began to appear in the bark, hundreds, crying, whispering, reaching. The ground shook. "Stop her!" the queen shrieked. The girls lunged at Chibugo with their eyes blank and glassy, but as they touched her, the silver light of her cross burned their hands. They fell back, crying out. The queen's face stretched in cracked, dark liquid oozing from her mouth. "You cannot defeat me, child. This place is mine." Chibugo's voice grew louder. "Deliver us from evil." The cross in her hand flared with blinding light. The roots of the tree convulsed, tearing through the ground. A wailing sound rose, dozens of voices crying at once. The queen shrieked, her face dissolving into smoke. Then everything went black. When Chibugo woke, she was lying in the chapel. The morning sun was streaming through the stained glass windows. Father Benedict, the school chaplain, was kneeling beside her, praying. He looked at her, eyes filled with awe and fear. "Child, what happened?" She opened her mouth, but her voice came out as a whisper.
The tree. It's gone. And it was. The courtyard was empty, nothing but a circle of ash where the Iroko once stood. In the following weeks, the school buried its silence. The teachers said a storm had struck the tree. The girls whispered that the queen had been defeated at last. Yet some nights, when the wind was high and the lights flickered, Chibugo thought she could still hear a voice beneath the earth. Soft, patient, waiting. She never told anyone about the shadow that sometimes passed beneath her dormitory window, or the faint wrestling that returned whenever she prayed too loudly. But each night she held her grandmother's cross tight and whispered, "The Lord is my light and salvation. Whom shall I fear?" And outside, somewhere in the quiet earth of Nmor,